I want to call it a lie, to be honest, that we've been sold that we're never going to experience. There's going to be a place, some point in our lives where we're going to have perfect calm and ease. I was definitely sold this.
No.
And I found that to be, it doesn't exist.
Right.
Actually, part of the human experience is challenge. It is difficult emotions, and emotions actually aren't bad.
Right.
They rise and they peak and then they fall. And if we can find a way to be present to those feelings, they actually move on their own. And that's what regulation actually is.
And it's so good for you to say this, because you're absolutely right. We've been taught not to be able to feel, and we've been taught that that if we experience anything, it is devastating. Like, it is just not to happen. Like, and it's interesting because I think, and I just put a clip out yesterday, because I have so many parts of my brand that go in different directions. Like you, I do a lot of different things. And I'm so glad. I want to back up to that and say, I'm so glad you said that, because I actually had somebody send me a message in LinkedIn the other day that read my profile and said something about that I was like waiting for disaster to happen. And I'm like, clearly you do not understand us. You do not understand us. Because our brains don't go linear in wonder. We have lots of things happening, and we are good at a lot of different things. It doesn't mean that we're going to,
thank goodness, right? The world needs people like us to operate. It's different brains that are changing the world and are innovating things. Thank goodness you're that way, Jennifer.
You too. I had an attorney. She was a former attorney for the government that came on here that at one time that actually studies, kind of like we're doing, but like studies neurodivergent. And she really was on this whole idea that we're like a superpower. And she basically said, like, I always remember pieces of my episodes, but I remember us discussing this. She said, like, when people like this go into a meeting where 90% of the people get stuck talking about the problem and what happened to lead to the problem, the neurodivergent has already gone from A through F and has the plan. They can't even explain the B, C, D, E, because they're at A through F. And they're like, why are we not moving to the plan? And I was laughing at her because I thought about this, like, every meetings kill me. They kill me. Because we will go in and people will keep hashing about the same thing. And I'm like, we need to move. Let's get the plan in place and move forward. Talking does nothing. To me, it just seems so simple. It's like, we've got the problem. We know, don't do this again. Let's figure out what didn't work. And now let's move to the next stage. So I love that you said that. But to go back to what you originally said, yes, we have been taught that we are not allowed to have feelings and that problems are a bad thing. Challenges are a bad thing. And we know, those of us who've been in this space or have had to learn to adapt to this, recognize that it's not a matter of if challenges exist. Challenges are always going to exist. Your job is to learn to navigate through them and be okay in them. And that's where all that nervous system stuff comes in, because it allows us to sit in that and go, okay, this sucks right now. Just let me work this out. Whatever I got to do. If I got to throw at the wall, if I need to pound my chest, if I need to run, splash water, whatever that is. But just sit in the emotion and process, and you gain so much strength and grit and resilience and clarity from going through that. You know what I mean?
Right. And I would also add that I think what the challenge really is that the resistance to the pain, like, of course, I understand it's not nice to feel these feelings, but part of what's not nice about feeling them is that we resist them. And because we think that we shouldn't, or they shouldn't exist. And if anyone listening has ever experienced a panic attack, that's a pretty good example of that, right? Like, when you can feel it coming and then suddenly it hits you, there is no, if you resist it, it gets,
it's awful,
stronger, right?
Yeah.
And if you can go, okay, I'm having a panic attack, this sucks, this is what's happening, and you ride the wave of it. That's when things shift, actually. So,
And
but we
you
aren't
are
taught
right.
that.
I have had I have, and that's part of, like when I started studying the nervous system stuff, that stuff, that
Mhm.
is why I did that, because I was going through this health stuff and I couldn't get better. And so I was developing these, some of it was
Mhm.
some nutritional deficiencies that I was having as well, that were contributing to things. But I was having a lot of anxiety, and that was leading to these intense panic attacks. And I'd start panicking that I'm going to have a
Right,
panic attack, right? And
right.
so I started doing the nervous system work really as just a way to assist myself through that process. And what's so funny now is because I still deal with health stuff, but sometimes every time it happens, there's always that fear, like, what's going on, right? And I'm learning now, like you're gonna laugh. I told my husband the day, I go, okay, I'm having one of my waves right now. I feel like crap right now. This happens all the time, but we know I keep living through it. Like I keep standing here. So we're just gonna breathe and we're just gonna work ourselves out of this, right? Psychologically, I'm like just telling myself, deal with it. You're okay. Just breathe, doing
Mhm.
my whatever my I have lots of different things I do too, but, you're right. It's just sometimes it's just sitting in that, and if you fight it, it is so much, because if you freak out, then the core everything gets going, you get in the fight or flight, everything gets moving, and you're just think you're dying.
Yeah,
You know what? It's awful, so I'm with you on that.
yeah.
So, I love this. So, golly, we had so much conversation right there in, like, how many minutes? 21 minutes of talking about our professional work here. It's so good. I love what you're
So
doing. So,
cool.
when you do, talking about, like, nervous system, you mentioned earlier or a little while ago about relationship building, and I think so much of this nervous system too, we talk about, like, the physical aspects of it, right? Like, what it does for the body physically, but that does affect our relational building as well. And I've done workshops on this before where I've talked about,
Mm,
like, high energy people, low energy people, how they process things differently. Like I'm a very high energy person. So like you said, we have to practice calming. Whereas
mhm.
like, maybe a low energy person, when they go into that dorsal vagal, for them, it's like we got to get them activated, get them moving, the opposite side. But part of that is I brought up kind of the connection between that and, emotional regulation and how we show up, with people around us. And so maybe you want to expand on that a little bit, because I think that's an area people really like to talk about. You know what I mean? Like
Mm,
how we can show up healthy for the
mhm,
world around us,
mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think that it starts with really getting to know yourself and your own patterns and how do you connect in relationship. Is connection something that you move towards, or is
Yeah.
it something that feel scary to you? Because we all have different patterns like that, and you might have some relationships where they feel really safe and some that we kind of pull away from. And I think it's really about getting to know your own signals and your own kind of perception of safety and danger first. We are wired to be in connection. We are wired to be in relationship. And I think understanding that is really helpful because the brain's number one job is to keep you safe.
Right.
That's it. Survival. It's not about joy or happiness at a foundational level, right? It is about survival. And how do we survive? We survive in community. We were designed that way. As mammals, we are the longest, humans are the longest dependent on their caregivers out of all mammals. And that continues throughout our lifespan. So I think often a lot of our anxiety actually comes from a fear of rejection. And
Yeah.
so understanding that can give us a lot of self compassion. I think self compassion and curiosity are two of the kind
Yeah.
of magic ingredients in life. And if we can bring that into our relationships more, just understanding that the people that we're interacting with also have those priorities. Their priority is also safety. Their priority is also to avoid rejection. And so they've also got stuff going on, right? So yeah, it's a
I like
dynamic
that.
process.
Yeah, I like that you said curiosity. I feel like that's a buzzword we talk. I feel like everybody it's kind of the universal thing for everybody that's sort of in that growing space or entrepreneur space. Anybody that's kind of
Mhm.
evolving is the curiosity, right? Because it should be curiosity about yourself, curiosity about learning about others, curiosity to learn about your situation. I mean, it really is should be at the front of everything in leading, because I
For
think
sure.
when you're coming from that mindset, you can work towards solving or at least attempting to understand, right? You may not be able
Mhm.
to solve every human conditions are very difficult to solve. They're complex. You can't solve humans. You just got to learn to navigate with humans, right? And so I think it allows you the ability to try to seek understanding, and that's where you're
Mhm.
talking about like that empathy comes in, and because if you're not asking questions and trying to learn about somebody, I don't know how you can even try to gain any knowledge and awareness.
For sure. And my mentor always says that when you're in curiosity, you can't be in judgment because it's
True.
different parts of
Yeah.
the brain. And so, yeah, it's just such a kind of different way of viewing things.
Yeah. I just finished up a program with Shirzad Shamin. He's I think a Stanford professor, I believe, but he does an entire project. It's basically positive intelligence, which you would love. I loved it. But he
Mhm.
talks about this sage brain, these two sides of our brain, which we left and right, where we got the reptilian brain, which is the
Mhm.
one part of the brain, the logic, right, where our survival. And then when we move out of that, that's when we get into that other part of the brain, I guess, the other side, which is our creativity and our,
Mhm.
curiosity,
Mhm.
explore all those things. So his whole premise is these micro tools that you do to actually stimulate that other side of the brain, which is the part we
Mhm.
want to be stimulating. Because this whole thing we've talked about, you brought up, like us not being able to sit in our emotions and being okay with feeling these things that come up for us. That's because that other side of the brain is trying to dominate all the time, and we have to get that other one to be, like, okay with being utilized. And, for so many people, I don't think they are in that they just don't know how to get into that space, you know what I mean?
Well, the hard part is that when you go into stress, when you
Yeah,
are activated, the part of your brain responsible for creativity, reasoning, problem solving, logic, and language
yeah,
is there's less resources going to that. So
yeah,
all of our wiring is focused on surviving. And so, yeah, what we really want to do, what these nervous system tools are doing, what
yeah,
these body tools are doing, what our connection with others, what we're doing with that is we're trying to signal safety to the nervous system so that it knows, okay, we can relax. Okay, we can let go a little bit, and then your logic and reasoning and creative brain can come back online.